especially when we picture what central Montana to look like today. However, it was once the reality, and people believe that it can and should be the reality again. Others believe that returning to this would be detrimental to the agricultural industry and Montana's economy. So today, both sides of the issue will be discussed, and you will have the opportunity for yourselves to decide, can American Prairie and the agricultural industry coexist in central Montana? American Prairie is a donor-funded, nonprofit organization that was founded in the 2000s with the sole mission to restore and conserve grassland ecosystems in the lower 48 states. Since then, American Prairie has completed 43 land transactions to build up their habitat base of 527,000 acres of land. Of that total, 140,000 acres are private lands owned by American Prairie. The other 386,000 acres are leased public lands, federal and state. American Prairie currently has 901 bison, but their long-term goal is to have up to 5,000 head of bison, which they believe is both realistic and possible. American Prairie's vision is to restore the grasslands and create American Serengeti, using bison to improve ecosystem health and wildlife diversity. Bison are a keystone species, and since then, American Prairie has seen increased numbers of grassland birds, swift foxes, black-footed ferrets, and many other species that are benefiting the bison. American Prairie also works with Native American tribes, such as the Fort Belknap Reservation, where they offer more educational opportunities for students and increase bison numbers on tribal herds. In addition to ecological restoration, American Prairie also promotes tourism through hiking, hunting, and camping. American Prairie decides that natural regulation of the bison herds will occur once they start reintroducing more bison into the herds. Now, this may seem like positive changes. However, if you look at them from a different perspective, things could look quite different. Imagine you were the child of a third-generation cattle rancher in north central Montana, where ranching contributes $1.5 billion to the state's economy. You and your family have sustainable land and cattle management, but now a donor-funded, nonprofit organization is coming in, buying land, and turning it into a bison reserve. The neighboring ranchlands you once knew are now being replaced by bison. And the grasslands you once relied on for grazing are now being sold to American Prairie for high prices that you cannot compete with. The 140,000 acres of private land are coming from somewhere. And unfortunately, many ranchers are being forced to sell because of American Prairie's high prices. To make matters worse, the Bureau of Land Management, or BLM, has recently approved American Prairie's grazing applications on 63,000 acres of public land. Many ranchers feel that this violates the Taylor Grazing Act of 1934, which was put into place to protect public land for livestock use. Many ranchers feel that they are losing vital resources when it comes to American Prairie's bison herds expanding. Now, American Prairie is held to the same grazing standards as any other cattle rancher in Montana. However, they are granted special permissions to alter the land to fit their vision. These changes, such as modifying reservoir fences, are seen by the ranchers as detrimental to the agricultural industry. So, today, we decide, can American Prairie and the agricultural industry coexist in central Montana? One major concern of a livestock producer is disease. Brucellosis, a disease that can cause cattle to abort their calves, can be transmitted by wildlife, including bison. Many ranchers feel that they are losing vital resources, and that the proximity of American Prairie's bison herds will put their cattle at risk. However, American Prairie insists that this is a non issue, approved by local officials in Montana. I have personally spoke with Scott Heidebrink, Director of Bison Restoration at American Prairie, and he states that the bison herd health of American Prairie is just as important to them as any other cattle operation in the state of Montana. He also states that new coming bison must go through an extensive quarantining process before they can be admitted into American Prairie's current bison herd. Deanne Robbins, a local cattle rancher in north central Montana, leads a movement called Save the Cowboy to stop American Prairie from expanding their bison herds. She believes that American Prairie's vision to create an American Serengeti is an attack on local ranching culture and businesses. Now, with all of this being said, the thing that suffers the most is Phillips County, home to the town of Malta. According to Phillips County commissioners, the town of Malta has lost a volume of students, storefront businesses are suffering, feed stores are suffering, and gas and diesel sales are down. Even though American Prairie is not intending this, they're single-handedly stripping the life out of a small town on the high line of Montana. So, the question still stands. Can American Prairie and the agricultural industry coexist in central Montana? At the beginning of this speech, we pictured a restored landscape with the bison roaming freely and the Native Americans reconnecting with their heritage. Although this is a compelling reality, it contrasts with a shrinking agricultural industry, lost ranches, and deteriorating small towns. So now you decide, can American Prairie and the agricultural industry coexist in central Montana? Thank you.
Okay, the judges now have 5 minutes to ask questions, starting right now.
I just wanted to ask, you mentioned the Save the Cowboy movement earlier, and could you talk to us a little bit about what the Save the Cowboy movement is doing right now?
Yes, so that movement, they're just trying to stop American Prairie from expanding. They don't want to disturb anyone else in Montana. They just don't want the bison to keep spreading throughout Montana. That is their main goal right now.
I guess I'll kind of piggyback off of that question. So the Save the Cowboy movement obviously opposes the American Prairie Reserve. Recently, we've seen a lot of action with conservation programs through the U.S. Department of Agriculture. What would be some of the next steps that the Save the Cowboy movement can take with some of these conservation programs to find that Serengeti that you have been talking about?
Yes, so I know that there are some lawsuits going on right now, and I think that that is something that they would want to try to avoid. I would definitely say that they need to keep doing their research and find the right people to talk to. If they get the right people to talk to, they're going to realize that American Prairie has another side, that they really aren't trying to disrupt the flow of Montana. They're just trying to do what they believe in, which is restore the grasslands. And they truly believe that the bison are going to help with that. And I think that the people need to do their research and try to just understand a little bit more and not be so one-track minded. And I think that would definitely help them.
So how do they get their members for the Save the Cowboy movement? How does one enroll?
Yes, so I'm not exactly sure, but I would assume that anybody that wants to help could join. I'm not exactly sure about that question. That is something that I need to do more research on, but yes.
Question.
Yes.
How did you manage personal bias when conducting your interviews with American Prairie and Save the Cowboy?
Yes, so that is definitely one thing walking into this. I was very one track minded. I was very negative, anti American Prairie. However, when you walk into a competition like this and you're doing research, you need to have both sides to have a good argument. So for myself, I took out my personal thoughts, I set them aside for a minute, and I did the research for American Prairie. And then I did the research for the cattle ranchers and the rest of people in Montana. And then I put them together and I formed kind of a different opinion, honestly. I was very, very anti APR, but now that I see the other side of that, they are just trying to do what they believe in. Although the ranchers feel that it is hurting the state of Montana, that's not what they think that they're doing. They are just trying to help Montana. However, many ranchers, if you ask them, they will disagree with that. I used to be that person. However, when you do the research, you find out that there are other reasons behind the story. So if you just dig deep enough, you can get the full story.
So you bring up Malta, Phillips County, as an example of a town that is directly harmed by the American Prairie movement. And I was wondering if there was any specific data that could point to this being causation directly instead of correlation.
Yes, so I spoke with county commissioners in Phillips County, and they are very negative American Prairie. You can imagine, as I stated in my speech, they are losing a volume of students, the storefront businesses are suffering, all that good stuff. They need to, again, it's very, they're anti-APR. I understand that. Most everybody that lives there is going to be. What I think a lot of people don't understand is that they truly, truly, truly don't want to harm Montana.
So I guess I'll kind of go off that one as well. Talking about not harming Montana from a cattle rancher or a producer standpoint. Obviously, the APR bringing these bison herds onto these lands brings up food security risk with brucellosis. On the American Prairie side, it's restoring the land back to its natural health, which could also be a food security risk. Where do we meet in the middle? What steps need to come from both sides so that we can find that Serengeti?
Yes, so American Prairie, with their brucellosis, when they get new bison, oftentimes they trade bison with the Fort Belknap Reservation.
And that's
When
time.
Ours, thank you. From hold on, sorry. From Winifred, and her topic is cultivating wellness, addressing the mental health crisis in farmers and ranchers.
I want you to remember a number for me throughout this entire speech. 3.5. Farmers and ranchers are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population. 1 in every 2,000 producers each year will take their own life. My father is the strongest man I know, but when I found out that he was dealing with depression and suicidal thoughts, and that he could have become that 1 in 2,000 last year, I realized just how big of an issue this really is. This led me to do some research, and I learned a lot along the way. The National Institute of Occupational Health and Safety says a career in agriculture is one of the most stressful and mentally draining jobs a person can have. And yet, every year, brave men and women take on these jobs to not only provide for their families, but to provide for the world. These stressful jobs push many into unhealthy ways of coping, such as drinking alcohol. More than 1/3 of our nation's agriculturalists are alcoholics. And many more admit that they use alcohol to help cope with stress. This not only negatively affects themselves and their bodies, but it affects everyone around them. Without the proper support that they need, they feel as if there is only one option. I'm here to tell you today, there is never only one option. But why are they feeling this way? Why are the bravest men and women of our nation fighting these mental battles every single day and so often losing? One of the biggest reasons is the uncontrollable variables they have to face on a daily basis. Whether they are selling cattle, wheat, or any other agricultural product, the markets are constantly changing. Unlike most salary and hourly jobs, farmers and ranchers rely on the markets to determine their income. Along with this, weather changes and unpredictability add to the stress that they're already feeling. Even if the markets are good, a hailstorm or drought could wreak havoc on their agricultural products. Farmers and ranchers rely on uncontrollable variables to determine if they'll get a paycheck, if they'll be able to continue in agriculture. I don't know who wouldn't be stressed under those circumstances. The next reason we're seeing this mental health crisis in our producers mostly pertains to the little guys on family farms and ranches. Most of them, like my own father, had to take out a loan to even get started in agriculture, and the majority of those people have owed money ever since. Many of them, once again like my family, take out operating loans year after year after year to even be able to continue to do what we do, while others that I know have to take out loans to fix a piece of equipment that they cannot feed their cows without. No matter the situation, the financial stress that farmers and ranchers constantly deal with push many into these unhealthy ways of coping, such as drinking alcohol and suicidal thoughts or actions. There are many things that cause this mental health crisis, but the last one I'm going to talk about today is the lack of support that producers are given. Many people disregard mental health in our farmers and ranchers. I did, and it was right in my house. And even then, there's still no resources for them to get the help that they need. This is especially prevalent in rural areas. Where I'm from, you have to drive 40 miles one way just to see a therapist or doctor. When those resources are available nearby, they're often much too expensive. What good is it to go talk to someone about your financial struggles when you're paying them upwards of $200 an hour to talk to them about that? And when these resources are available nearby and affordable, we still don't see them being utilized because of how producers want to be perceived. I know very few farmers and ranchers who will willingly ask for help with simple tasks. They will definitely not ask for help with their mental health. Even if they're in a dark place mentally, they won't reach out. But what can we do to stop this? How can people like you and I stop the ever-growing number of farmers and ranchers who will lose their will to live each year? The first solution is by far the easiest. In your pocket right now, maybe in your bag, you have a cell phone that can reach anyone, anywhere, at any time. All you have to do is reach out to save a life. It takes a few seconds to send a text, to leave a voicemail, to call someone for a couple minutes. But it can make all the difference. If my family hadn't reached out to my dad, he might not have walked my sister down the aisle at her wedding in December. He might not see me receive my state degree tomorrow or graduate in May. And it's all because people who loved him reached out. The next solution I propose is an agricultural act that will help with the financial stressors that producers feel. This could be in the form of subsidized loans to help farmers and ranchers pay off their loans without getting beaten by those high interest rates. It could also be in the form of grants that will help with the startup of farms and ranches and help to buy agricultural equipment that is required in this day and age. With help on these financial stressors, producers are going to have way less mental health issues, It's going to take a lot of stress out of their daily lives. The final solution I propose is a national mental health helpline for those in agriculture. This would be a 24/7 call or text program that is completely free and anonymous. With something like this, I know we would see these producers reaching out to get help instead of just bottling it up. But what does this all mean? It means that you and I have the power to save lives. It means that right now, we are standing by as millions of people die because of mental health issues. It means that we have a duty to help those people who provide literally everything for us. And I implore you to fulfill that duty today, to take a second to send a text or make a call, because you might just save a life. It should not be the case that farmers and ranchers are 3.5 times more likely to commit suicide than the general population. Thank you.
Okay, we will give 5 minutes to the judges to ask questions, starting now.
Hi. Did you encounter in your research any states or programs that set a good example for that agricultural act you mentioned?
Yeah, so actually, I was doing some research on this, and Farm Bureau kind of has some stuff like that. There are also other, I believe it was Nebraska, their government is starting to help with loans that have lower interest rates for those people in agriculture and stuff like that. Montana doesn't have a whole lot of resources right now that I could find, but there are some resources out there. But the thing is, a lot of times they're hard for farmers and ranchers to find those resources, and especially if you're not good with technology, it takes a lot of work to kind of pick out those resources.
If you were talking to an FFA member that was as passionate about this topic as you are, how would you instruct them to go about advocating for this proposed financial aid for agriculture mental health package you talked about?
Yeah, so the first thing I would do to help them advocate for this financial help for agriculturalists is just to start talking to people about it. That's the biggest step in something like this, is to make it a known issue. Many people don't think that the mental health crisis in farmers and ranchers is that bad, but it really is. And so once you get that support behind you, it's a lot easier to get the word out there. Then I would get them talking to their local government. I would get them talking to their state government, to companies in and around them that can make a difference by maybe providing these grants, or start advocating in ways like doing speaking events or speaking at other conferences and just getting the word out there so that more people are behind them.
You discussed a lot about some action that you would like to take moving forward with the helpline. I know there are several programs throughout the state that need to expand, and I'm sure you would be glad to help them do that. Looking at a different perspective, you talked about that there's not necessarily any current funding programs set up to help these producers, but what are some other ag policy actions that have taken place recently that would be able to help these producers in these financial situations?
Yeah, so there are a lot more there is a lot more help coming from our federal government to help these producers. I know for one thing, even just filling out the FAFSA this year, they take into account a lot better financial help from your parents when they're farmers and ranchers than they used to. It used to be they assumed that if your family owns land, they can sell that to send you to college. Well, they don't do that as much anymore. They're realizing that farmers and ranchers, even though they have all these assets, are still in financial trouble. And so with programs like that, they're not just looking at the assets farmers and ranchers have, but they're actually looking at what they're making each year. Some years it's in the negatives for many farms and ranches. And they're taking that into account instead of just looking at all the assets that they have and how much money came in, but then they're actually looking at, it takes a lot to run a farm and ranch, and most of that money is just leaving as soon as it comes in.
Any more questions? All right, I think we're good.
Thank you.
Thank you.
All right, thank you, Joanna. Our next contestant is Kylie Finn, representing Cascade, and her topic is urban agriculture, the solution to feeding the future.
When I was a kid, my most favorite meal ever was chicken spaghetti. I would ask my mom to make it for me every year for my birthday, and every other day she possibly could. I loved every part of it: the creamy cheese, the tasty chicken, the slight heat from the rotel. Even thinking about it now makes me hungry. I was fortunate enough to always have enough food, thanks to my hardworking parents and, of course, hardworking farmers. However, in the coming years, these farmers will have to work even harder. The USDA estimates that even with medium population growth, producers will need to grow 14,060 trillion crop calories to feed 9.75 billion people by 2050. This would be a 47% increase from the baseline of 9,000 trillion crop calories in 2011. If population growth reaches the highest estimation of 10.8 billion people, this number jumps up to 15,410 trillion crop calories, a whopping 61% increase. To make matters worse, we are rapidly losing agricultural land. Censuses from 2017 and 2023 show that 21 million acres of farmland have been lost in the last 6 years. We need food. There is no other way for us to survive. So, how do we solve the problem of more demand and less space? Say hello to urban agriculture. Urban agriculture can be anything from a small community rooftop garden to edible landscaping used to beautify large corporate buildings. And it isn't a brand new idea. Currently, urban agriculture contributes to 15 to 20% of the global food supply, according to the International Climate Hub of the USDA. While urban agriculture cannot grow the amount of grains that are produced globally to support industries like cosmetics and fuel, it is possible to supply enough fruits, vegetables, eggs, poultry, honey, and even milk to feed those living in these urban areas. In my 3rd grade science class, I remember watching an episode of The Magic School Bus where the kids visited a supposedly haunted farm. Turns out it was really run by advanced technology. One scene that caught my attention immediately was the crops growing up the wall of a barn. At the time, this seemed like a miracle. But in truth, it is a reality, just not exactly as I imagined. Vertical farming does not yet exist on the sides of skyscrapers, but is instead crops stacked in layers inside those buildings. In fact, many large vertical farming corporations have begun popping up in cities such as LA, New York City, and Newark to plant vertical farms in office buildings that have emptied after the COVID-19 pandemic. The largest of these companies, AeroFarms, uses carefully selected plants, aeroponics, and custom lighting to grow produce that is then sent along major distribution routes and sold in stores like Whole Foods Market and H-E-B. Livestock is an even larger part of agriculture than crops, with land for livestock and crops grown for their feed taking up 80% of agricultural land. As we now know, we're losing that land, which is why small livestock is becoming more important than ever. The poultry sector alone experienced a 67% increase in sales between 2021 and 2022, while taking up only 33% of what the average farm in the US covers. Given their small space requirements and ability to convert food waste into fertilizer, chickens have proven to be the perfect urban livestock. And many cities are starting to realize this. In 2017, Austin, Texas began offering chicken keeping classes. and a $75 reimbursement for attending the class and purchasing a chicken coop as part of the Austin Resource Recovery's home composting rebate program, as reported by local news station KVUE. 2 years later, research was conducted on those who participated in the program. It was found that each backyard chicken consumed an average of approximately 89.2 pounds of household scraps per year, which cut the greenhouse gases of decomposition for that amount of food in half. Along with programs like the Austin Resource Recovery's home composting rebate program, major cities have implemented other sources of urban agriculture to continue the attempt to reduce city emissions and create production sources. This has often appeared in the form of edible landscaping and bioswales. A bioswale, simply put, is a vegetated ditch that collects runoff water from roads and other similar infrastructure, usually during storms. The job of a bioswale differs from a regular storm drain in that it filters nutrient pollutants so they do not enter a water source. In a study on 7 bioswales located in the Bronx, New York, over the course of 42 storms, it was found that despite the bioswales leaching 1.3 kilograms nitrogen per year into the subsurface, they still decreased watershed pollution from 7.7 kilograms to 6 kilogram nitrogen per year, thanks to their retention of stormwater. These bioswales also provide a food source for pollinators, increasing honey production, and are grown with plants such as inland sea oats, which are edible to both people and livestock. Given all this information, it seems as though much needed urban agriculture is already well established. So why am I here talking to you about it today? These statistics only show part of the story. Outdated municipal zoning codes in cities across America restrict or even ban composting, chicken keeping, and even growing vegetable plants. And although organizations like Philadelphia's Parks and Recreation Division and representatives like Congresswomen Alma S. Adams and Shontel Brown are fighting for a legislature that allows for this necessary industry, many urban areas are struggling to keep up. My own nearby city, Great Falls, has fought within itself over urban chickens for the past 12 years. An ordinance allowing for citizens within city limits to own chickens has come up in 2011, 2017, and 2021, and each time it has failed to see its way through. Currently, as stated in Title VI of Great Falls City Code, it is unlawful for a person to keep, harbor, or maintain livestock within the corporate limits at any time. When those in an already semi-rural community are so against livestock within city limits, concerns rise about how those in fully urban areas will react. Luckily, there is a bright side. The USDA has continually supported the growth of urban agriculture through farmers markets programs, rural cooperative grants, child nutrition programs, and cooperative extension programs. And with the enactment of the 2018 Farm Bill, support was extended with the creation of the Office of Urban Agriculture, which promotes community gardens, rooftop farms, aquaponics, greenhouses, and so much more. With our loss of land and increase in food requirements, we need urban agriculture. The developing support from organizations and government officials makes it possible to continue the growth of already established programs and the birth of new ones, all so we can continue to enjoy our favorite meals, like chicken spaghetti. Thank you.
All right, the judges will have 5 minutes to ask questions starting now.
Hello. In our northern climate, what agricultural products would you recommend to produce in urban settings?
So something we've actually started at our school is developing an aquaponics program for lettuce. Lettuce grows really well in environments that are wet, such as aquaponics, and that have a lot of light. While maybe we don't get a lot of light during the winter, these do great in small indoor greenhouses, which cost under $100 to start. Another source of agriculture that works really well in the north is cold hardy poultry. Poultry are small, easy for a small family to take care of, and if you get cold hardy breeds, they do exceptionally well. You can get both meat and eggs from these animals.
Just going to play a little devil's advocate here. You know, you talked a lot about the urban agriculture, all of the growth, the USDA funding that is coming through. When we're talking, you talked a lot about poultry. Currently, right now, obviously, the poultry industry facing a lot of challenges with the avian influenza. It spreads easily in these urban areas. It spreads fast, and it's a risk for food security. What are some other concerns for urban agriculture, some of these challenges that they are facing to prevent them from continuing to grow?
Yes, so the avian influenza has been a major hit on the poultry industry. While I did specifically mention poultry in my speech, there are many other livestock that serve really well to be urban livestock, such as goats. Goats are great meat and dairy animals that can live in a small space. When we talk about urban agriculture, disease is always going to be a problem. In close proximity, it's the same thing with people, with animals, with crops. No matter what, we're going to see disease. The most important thing I want to stress when it comes to keeping urban animals is that they have small space requirements. These families have small spaces that they can keep these animals in. So most of these families will only have 3 to 5 animals to support their entire family. With that amount of animals, it's very easy to keep your areas clean, and that's the most important thing, is making sure you're not cross-contaminating with other families and you're keeping your area clean.
You mentioned the use of biosoils earlier and how they do a great job at reducing nitrogen pollution in groundwater and runoff. Can you talk to us a little bit about why we should care about nitrogen pollution? Why is it important?
Yes, so obviously when you live in a big city, although we do not have very many big urban areas in Montana, there's a lot of trash going into our sewers. Instead of having storm drains where we're just letting that go freely into our water sources that we're drinking from, bioswales will filter that out using plants. The main problem with nitrogen pollution is, like I said, it's going into our drinking water. And this isn't safe for us, this isn't safe for our animals. When there's an overabundance of nitrogen, we get an overabundance of algae growth, and that is not healthy for us. Bioswales are an extremely efficient way to manage this problem. While it does cost $5.50 to $24 per square foot to replace storm drains with bioswales, they only cost 5 to 60 cents to maintain after they've been put in.
So you mentioned the issues that Great Falls had with getting chickens. We've had similar issues in Miles City. What are the arguments against chickens in city limits, and how do you think that can be overcome, or should it be?
Great Falls citizens who voted against chickens within city limits had 2 main concerns. One was noise level, and the other was waste. A lot of cities implement no rooster laws, which gets rid of your noise problem. Any citizen within Great Falls that ends up with a rooster, there are many around the area that would be willing to take those, or those animals can be culled. The waste problem can be solved by the city creating a contract with a local fertilizer plant that is located 30 minutes outside Great Falls in Power, Montana. If the city were to do this, that fertilizer plant could come pick up the waste from the community chicken coops and turn it into fertilizer.
Any other questions?
Do have one more question.
Perfect.
It just left my brain. Yes. So with the internet, it's really easy to find all sorts of information about raising livestock, growing vegetables. How do you propose we address misinformation around agriculture, especially with urban clients?
So as social media has grown, it has been a great platform to spread information about agriculture, but it is also a great platform to spread misinformation. And that can be difficult
That's
to deal
time.
with.
All right, thank you, Kylie. Our last contestant is Claire Mernon, representing the Shepherd FFA chapter, and her title is Cattle Calling the Future.
Where spurs are jingling, a cowboy is singing this lonesome cattle call. Ooh. do-do-do-do, do-dee-dee, yo-do-dee-dee-dee. The song The Cattle Call by Eddie Arnold depicts the life of a cowboy in a time of the American Wild West. In a time where the idea of saddling up your horse and gathering cows was normal, this song perfectly depicts the care that cattle ranchers have prided themselves upon for ages. However, this song is no longer the typical life of the American cowboy. Now we are seeing cowboys hop on their four-wheelers or deploy their drones to gather their cattle. In just a few short years, we could be seeing that the cattle call is not one that is said by a cowboy, but rather sang by artificial intelligence. With the rise of technology across all industries, it is creating many opportunities for agriculturists across the globe. With an expected population of 9.8 billion people by 2050, many agriculturists are left with the question of how to increase efficiency on agricultural operations while also sustaining agricultural tradition. Technology is the answer to this question, but where must the line be drawn with technology? With the rise of technology across all industries, especially with regard to AI, there are definitely some concerns that people face. Artificial intelligence is defined by Penn State as a system that mimics the human thinking process and adapts to additional information. There are many concerns that agriculturists face as they consider integrating this technology into their operations. These concerns include job displacement, technology maintenance, and the ethical use of artificial intelligence. However, these concerns are far outweighed by the positives that artificial intelligence has to offer. Artificial intelligence will drive the beef industry into a more efficient future. Artificial intelligence will do this through increasing productivity on cattle operations, offering valuable data to beef producers, and offering sustainable solutions to cattle operations, allowing the cattle industry to enter a new global era of agriculture. First, artificial intelligence will help increase efficiency on cattle operations. Artificial intelligence will do this through carrying out simple tasks that take up time on operations. For instance, the time that it takes to check cattle for wellness. It's reported by an article released by Forbes that researchers at Merck Animal Health realized that they could utilize microphones to capture sounds and artificial intelligence to analyze those sounds to check for key features of bovine respiratory disease. The use of artificial intelligence, especially to detect critical diseases like this one, is a complete game changer for the cattle industry. Rather than having ranchers or their employees spend hours each day checking cattle for wellness, simple microphones and artificial intelligence can do that same job in a matter of minutes. This can also be applied chute side. Rather than a rancher or their employee gathering the ear tag of the cow, the symptoms that they are experiencing, and the treatment that they are given, artificial intelligence can collect this data for the producers. Overall, artificial intelligence will help increase efficiency by carrying out these tasks for these producers. Secondly, artificial intelligence can provide valuable data to beef producers. It can happen throughout all stages of the beef production cycle. It's reported by an article released by the Farmer's Guide, the United Kingdom's leading agricultural magazine, that AI can detect animal location, behavior and activity levels, feed intake, and gait quality, offering producers valuable insight into their animals' health. It's also later stated in that article that artificial intelligence can collect and model calving onsets and reduce the risks of stillbirth. Through providing this data to producers, they are able to quickly make decisions on their operations, and maybe even save a calf or two along the way. There is also another company called GeneCove that is working to hopefully provide more valuable data about the genome of cattle to producers. Their goal is to provide prediction accuracy to cattle producers so that way they can select the best cattle in their specific breed that meets their specific genome markers that they have. Now, this is specifically applied with market animals. It's reported by a study that was published by the National Library of Medicine that out of 948 feedlot steers, they were able to find, based on birth weight numbers as well as post-weaning gain and marbling, how the genome can impact beef production and allow cattle to finish even quicker than before. Overall, this data can be extremely beneficial to producers so that way they can make decisions about their cow herd that will hopefully benefit the agriculture industry. Finally, artificial intelligence can provide sustainable solutions to the cattle industry. It is reported by the United States Department of Agriculture that currently the cattle industry is responsible for 3.7% of U.S. greenhouse gas emissions. There are many ways that we can try to lower this number, but one of the largest ways is through focusing on our resources. One company called RanchBot is trying to eliminate the amount of water usage on cattle operations so that way people aren't checking water when they don't need to. With over 8,000 people using RanchBot across the entire United States, they have seen a 20% increase in efficiency. One producer stated that this is due to the fact that RanchBot is able to help manage water usage so that way they can hopefully use less resources overall. The use of artificial intelligence with companies like RanchBot is a complete game changer because it allows us to minimize the resources that we are using and could even allow us one day to have cattle that finish even faster. In conclusion, it is clear that artificial intelligence will drive the beef industry into a more efficient future through increasing productivity on cattle operations, as well as providing valuable data to producers and offering sustainable solutions to cattle producers. Now, it is in the cattle producers' hands to take steps to integrate these technologies into their operations. Because maybe instead of having producers sing the cattle call like Eddie Arnold, AI will be doing the singing for them. Thank you.
Hey, Claire, one of the big concerns about this new generation of AI and technology in agriculture is data privacy. And there's been some producers that are worried about some of these companies are gathering data on their herds or their fields. Is that a valid concern for producers, or do they not need to worry about data privacy?
There are many fears that arise with new technologies that are being integrated in any industry. And what I think of when I think of the concerns regarding privacy is when cell phones were first integrated into our society today. Think about a cell phone, and when they were first being integrated, people were scared about what this technology was going to bring. However, now we see that everybody has a cell phone in their hand that they bring around with them every single day. And of course, there are those fears about privacy. There are details that need to be ironed out, but at the end of the day, artificial intelligence will provide great solutions for cattle producers. And while yes, this technology is continuing to innovate, it will continue to be a part of the agriculture industry, just like cell phones have become a part of our civilization today.
Thank you for sharing all of that. And you talked a lot about the advancement, obviously, with the intelligence in the ag industry. You know, currently right now, specifically in the cattle industry, we're seeing the lowest cow herd size we've seen in the last 60 years. Shortages across the nation are occurring, and we're seeing less farmers each and every single day. With the advancement of this technology, obviously it's boosting our economy, boosting the industry, but is there a concern that it's going to take over producers' positions and their jobs? We're seeing fewer farmers, ranchers, and producers every single day. With this advancement, are we going to keep losing producers?
I think that the unique part of getting artificial intelligence into cattle operations is that it allows cattle producers to do more of what they enjoy about being cattle producers. Rather than doing the simple tasks of checking cattle for wellness or even running cattle through the chute, they can do the tasks that they enjoy, like saddling up their horses and being able to do that part of their jobs that they know and they love. And because of that, they're going to continue to keep cattle producers engaged and continue to help this industry go, because not only will this increase efficiency, but it will also allow cattle producers to do the tasks that they love every single day, like saddling up their horse, because AI will be doing the not so fun tasks on beef operations.
I'm going to piggyback off of your cell phone example. So cell phones come with monthly, yearly maintenance contracts, repairs, training at times. How do the expenses of all those features of a cell phone play into the economic sustainability of ranching?
As AI continues to advance, it gets more and more affordable for beef producers. I had the opportunity to speak with Andrew Copen, who is the CEO of RanchBot. And this was one of the questions that I had to ask him. How can this continue to be affordable for beef producers? And he actually said that as technologies continue to advance, they're becoming more accessible for all beef producers, and they actually pay off because they are allowing for time-saving practices. He said that over 500,000 people each day check waters that do not need to actually be checked worldwide. And through his company of RanchBot, they are able to provide a solution that actually saves time and is worth the money. And so as we see these technologies continue to advance, it's clear that they're becoming more and more accessible, and they're becoming time-saving for producers.
Thanks. I have another question. Obviously, with the advancement of this technology, it's phenomenal for the industry. I'm sure we can all relate to some of these producers that they do not like the advancement of technology and they're stuck in their old habits, their own ways, and I've been doing it for 70 years this way, so it's going to work. How do we encourage them to change, to make the change over into artificial intelligence?
When I received this question, I immediately think of something that Andrew had to say to me when I met with him. And he was talking about the differences between the United States and Australia. He's originally from Australia, and he said that in Australia, they hop on their four-wheelers and they try to be as efficient as possible. But in the United States where we live, we like some more of the cowboy culture of doing our jobs. We like to saddle up our horse. We like branding. We like to do these tasks. And I think that what AI has to offer beef producers is it. Thank you.
All right, that concludes the Prepared Finals contest. Can we get one more round of applause for our finalists? And thank you, judges, for coming out and judging this contest. We really appreciate it. Can we have a hand for them as well? And judges, if you can meet me and Dr. Sewell over left stage with all of your materials. Thank you.